eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light. In our galaxy, everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.
There we go. We nearly made it. We nearly made it on time for once. I hit you guys with the sneaky extra 15 minutes. I don't know if anybody noticed, but yeah, if anyone was wondering if I can do a show on time, the answer is no. How are we all going today, guys? I'm super excited for what we are going to be getting into today. I've basically spent the entire day putting all of this together, getting it in order, cutting up the clips, doing all the things that we need to do. And I'm really excited to show you guys what we've got today. So first of all, if you haven't already, please give the video a like. Let's try and get this stream pushed out there to as many people as possible. And if you are watching this back while it's not live, after the stream is finished, I'm going to go back and add in chapter markers for everything that we look at today and any links that are relevant. Okay, so fear not, fear not. But we've got plenty to get into. We're basically looking at the orbs, the spheres. This stuff has been really hitting the news lately, especially with the Buga Sphere, which we're going to be looking at. We're going to get to that, but we're going to wind it right back to the start after a little bit of an intro and kind of go through this stuff chronologically. Now, obviously, I don't have every orb sighting ever to exist in history, but I've done my best to get a pretty comprehensive rundown of things for us to look at today. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun. Now, I will just say this quickly. By the way, what a track in the intro. My man Contra is the guy who made it. He is here in the chat, so show him some love. Shout out to Contra. $2 from Toxic Fart, 7 a.m. here. My man's always in the chat, even at 7 a.m. Thank you for being here, brother. Thank you for the 2. I just want to give a quick little warning, okay? My camera might overheat during this live stream, and if it does, we'll just have to roll with it, okay? But I'm doing my best to avoid that. Hopefully, it won't happen. So, like I said, there's so much to get into today. I am going to read your comments and we will go back and forth a little bit, but I will try to keep this thing rolling as best as I can. So, like I said, is there, or as the thumbnail and the title suggests, is there an alien orb network that is operating on this planet? Because it certainly seems like it. And you're probably going to agree with that after we finish this video, because this stuff goes way back, okay? So, in the last video that I uploaded, which is just yesterday, I think, the other day before, we saw Ross Coulthart and Jesse Michaels talking about how he saw a giant orb being escorted and dozens of military helicopters around it, and this was in Sedona in Arizona. Well, we're going to kick today's show off on this side of the fence with a little video that I found from Arizona of a giant orb. So let me just get it up for you guys, because there's so many clips today. I'm going to do my best for it not to be disorganized, but sometimes things just take a little bit longer than we'd like. Here we go. All right, check this out. Wait, make sure we got some sound.
Videos right over my house.
Now, if that's not a giant orange plasma orb with a helicopter, I don't know what is.
Freaking orb. That's an orb being chased by a helicopter. What the hell? That is a straight up orb, dude. Being followed by a freaking helicopter.
Someone's saying this is in one of your older streams. It actually wasn't. A similar video was, though. And that's what's crazy, right? Is that
it smells like something's burning.
It's crazy that there are multiple videos of this out there, but there are other videos like this, but I have never seen this one before. So I wanted to kick the show off with that because, like I said, this was in Arizona, right where Ross was saying he saw it himself. And it's going to frame us up for the rest of the show because we're going to bounce back to Ross Coulthart for a moment. quick little $8 there from Susie Sunshine. I pledge to donate every time that you do Toxic Fart. There you go, Toxic Fart. The challenge is on. The challenge is on you. So let's go back to Ross Coulthart for a moment. Now, this is a clip I showed a couple of live streams ago, but I wanted to dive deeper into it, and now we've got a whole show around it. So this is going to frame us up here. So this is Ross Coulthart talking to Jesse. If you haven't seen it, it's only a quick clip if you have, about Patrick Jackson, but also about how Ross is aware that these orbs playing with and surrounding planes is not new by any means. So check this out.
I finally found a place that can test the ball for you, the sphere for you, because one of the things I get a lot of the inquiries about from our audience is, what happened to the sphere? You know, why haven't you?
Sorry, let me just give some context there for anyone who doesn't know. So Ross Coulthart actually, about, I'm going to say 4 months ago, I think it was the first ever reality check Q&A that they did. And Ross was telling a story about how he somehow has an orb not in his direct possession, but he knows someone who does, has one of these silver orbs. I think it's in Australia, I think. And Ross has been trying to get it tested for like a long time. Like, this isn't new. And that's just what he's referring to here. So just in case anyone wasn't aware.
Told us the story about the sphere. Yeah. And I was finally about to announce that we've got somebody who will allow us to do the testing on the sphere, because Jim won't let us cut into it for obvious reasons. And he told me, I'm sorry, Ross, Brandon Fugel's agreed to fly it in his private jet to Utah, where he's going to have it tested in the lab. And look, frankly, I'm really happy if that's going to be the case for Patrick, who I know, and for Jim, who's a beautiful guy, to finally get an answer. And Brandon, I've spoken to Brandon about it, and I've encouraged him to do it. And so hopefully it's all going to happen. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, let's hope. That's amazing. And I think Patrick, because you were talking about the chip, and so where my mind might go with that, again, I don't know if it's real, is that this is some sort of like global control system or something.
Well, Patrick's theory is that these spheres are part of a global defense system by some alien civilization to keep the bad guys out of Earth.
Right.
Okay. Sounds familiar.
I quite like Patrick. He's a very clever man.
Yeah.
He has an eclectic intelligence and he's fun. I honestly don't know how he could know that.
Right.
You know,
Sure.
and so, I mean, a lot of it is speculation. And
Yes.
he's got type 1 spheres and type 2 spheres. And often there'll be a photograph of a plane.
Yeah.
And you see these spheres around planes in UAP events.
Interesting.
So there's often a big, let's call it object rather than a craft. There's a big object that's clearly anomalous, sometimes beside an aircraft. And then as you look really closely, you'll see these dots that are these metallic spheres.
Interesting. Ross Coulthart seems to be very aware that orbs hover around planes. So he doesn't seem to be very interested in the MH370 videos, but that's okay. We're going to get to that. Like I said, this is a whole timeline we're doing here. I noticed somebody said about the helicopter video that, you know, Ross said there was more than one. Yes, he did. I wasn't trying to say that is the one that Ross saw. It's not. I'm just trying to say that it's in Arizona and there's clearly something going on there with orbs and helicopters. You know, I don't think that helicopter wasn't chasing the orb, by the way. I think they're doing something together. They're working together. Okay, so they were referencing a man named Patrick in that clip there, and who they're referring to is a guy named Patrick Jackson who wrote this book here, The Sphere Network. And basically, I'm going to give you an overview of Patrick's theory because I guess it's kind of the essence of today's video. Now, I don't subscribe to his theory 100%. I have my own sort of hypothesis and version of it, which I'm going to give you guys right at the end of the video. But for now, I'm going to tell you what Patrick Jackson theorizes about these orbs. So his sphere network theory proposes that an advanced non-human intelligence operates a hidden surveillance and control grid on Earth using invisible, and like these are possibly plasma-based spheres, but also metallic. I think that the ones that are metallic could also be plasma in a certain state or when they're activated, potentially when they're metal like the Buga Sphere and whatever. is when they're maybe like broken or deactivated. Who knows? But let's just say for this video's sake that these things could be the same thing, right? And he suggests that they do a multitude of different things, right? They monitor human activity, even at a micro level, interacting with us through like our digital devices and wireless signals. And they even may influence, this is where it gets kind of scary, our perception by manipulating consciousness, essentially, okay? Remember, this is just a kind of a vague overview so you guys understand what this is about. So there's different types. He categorizes these spheres into different types. You've got a type 1, which is an infrastructure sphere, which is roughly the size of a basketball, which is kind of like a network node or like a structural part of the structural framework of these data transfers and pathways between these orbs. Then you've got a type 2 sphere, which is between the tennis ball size and a basketball size, which are the ones that apparently interact with humans through our electronics, potentially monitor our thoughts and emotions and environmental data. And a type 3, which is like a specialist sphere, we can call it, often golf ball sized or smaller, but can vary. And these things handle precise interventions, modify perception, memory, or physical condition. And these are kind of like covert orbs that are linked with like high strangeness and things like that, paranormal events. And then you've got the type 4, which is like the supervisor coordinator sphere, which is sizes up to a beach ball or a yoga ball. Okay, so a big like exercise ball. And they oversee and coordinate the activity of the other spheres. They can distribute commands and kind of change basically what the go is with the rest of them. So that's just an overview for you so you guys kind of understand. The core idea is essentially that all of us weirdos and freaks here in the chat, essentially living inside an invisible control system, not necessarily like malevolent. It's not like he's not stating that it's a bad thing, but there is just some kind of highly advanced, deeply technical system that's embedded into our Earth and our environment. Someone's birthday that I've missed here in the chat. Diego Perez, my man, thank you for being here. Welcome and happy birthday to you, brother. So, following on from that, the idea that this is some kind of advanced system sounds a lot like the recent 4chan whistleblower, okay? Where they talk about their theory is that there is a giant underwater facility that manufactures and recycles these things, okay? This is where they're built, this is where they go back to, and they're rebuilt for a purpose, okay? They're single-use purpose things. And in another 4chan thread that we read through recently, they kind of refer to them as white blood cells, kind of protecting the planet from itself, like an immune system. But in that 4chan read-through, they talk about how the resources are depleting. And that's why we're seeing some of these orbs that look a bit weird. Jellyfish, we'll get into that in a little bit. And it's estimated that the resources are going to be fully depleted in 2027. This is according to the 4chan whistleblower, and from that point on, this facility will no longer be manufacturing these things, and therefore the Earth will not have the protection from its immune system. Okay, so here is a quick recap. It's about 3 minutes, a little cut up of just a few key points from the recent 4chan whistleblower talking about these things. The Earth has historically been a battleground for alien species. Over tens of thousands of years, exotic species have demonstrated magical, actually just quantum, ability to people of this planet to attain local godlike status. Think the Mahabharata in Hinduism. Some of this was for personal gain, whereas some were genuine sacrifice to teach people of this planet how to correctly increase quantum states to positive, what we call integer, flows. The repeated destructive flow was eventually stopped after a benevolent species laid claim to this planet and left behind an autonomous facility to regularly audit the planet for any outside interference. This planet has been under the protection of this ever-watching autonomous facility for a very long time. This is now ending due to the depletion of local resources, not just on this planet. It has been unable to print craft occupants for a while and has been gradually reducing the size of autonomous bots in an effort to maintain audit operations. The disarmament events aren't being caused by the Earth directly, but the system, what we call the Geoconscious Substrate Interface, GCSI, reacts to existential scale threats the way an immune system responds to cellular anomalies. So that GCSI that the 4chan whistleblower referred to is essentially like the Sphere network is what he's saying. But this person, whether it's real or not, I don't know, but they're referring to this whole thing as a system, and they call it the GCSI. Not moral or ideological, it's regulatory. Fascinating. UAPs are not the planet, but they are of it, and most of what we classify as UAP activity, especially around nuclear installations, is being carried out by earthbound constructs that interface with the planet's deep substrate. Some of them operate within mineral-dense fault zones, especially where piezoelectric activity is high. They're drawn to areas where we spike the energy profile of the biosphere, mainly nuclear tests, large-scale EM emissions, even mass trauma events. In 1983, we registered a spontaneous system-wide failure across 5 silo networks in the former USSR. The warheads were electronically disarmed by a non-invasive signal interference. We reverse-engineered the logs and found temporal offsets, inputs occurring microseconds before any known signal transmission. It wasn't jamming, it was anticipatory suppression. The signature matches the gravimetric and EM anomalies we've seen in both oceanic sites I mentioned earlier. So no, it's not aliens disarming our nukes, it's regulatory function carried out through mechanisms tied into the Earth's deeper architecture. Whether those mechanisms are autonomous constructs, biologically seeded probes, or some form of non-local computation happening in the crust, we don't know. But what we do know is when we get too loud, too fast, or too unstable, our planet steps in and it doesn't always ask. People are asking where to get the hoodie. This is a one-of-one hoodie, but merch is on my radar. It's just not a priority at the moment, but I do want to. It's coming, guys. It's coming. It's so early. Polarity didn't even wear the white t-shirt today. It's actually late. It's 9:30 p.m. here, and it's really cold. So, but the heater is on, and that's why I think my camera might overheat. But hopefully not. I believe the crafts carry autonomous intelligence imprinted on them for material retrieval. Most of the legitimate high-velocity, non-ballistic UAPs tracked beyond low Earth orbit fall into one of 3 categories based on trajectory modeling and isotopic propulsion residue. We're starting to understand this phenomenon originating in a way we never defined previously. Earth is no longer classified as a planet, but a node. The threat is not about a nuclear weapon detonating directly. It's the weapon being allowed to detonate due to the lack of resources from our autonomous facility to stop it from happening. The Earth is about to be opened up to outside interference again in the most overt way possible. All right, and that's the last time we're going to watch me on my own stream because obviously no one likes watching themselves, but I felt like it was important to just kind of give you that quick little recap, okay? Because I think the 4chan whistleblowers theory, remember the original one is from like 2 years ago now. And like they said in that original thread, that they said, come back to this thread over the next few years and you'll see what I'm saying is going to keep coming true and keep coming true. And I mean, so far they haven't really missed at all. But understandably, people have a lot of a problem with it because it's anonymous and it's on 4chan. But, you know, who are you going to believe? These ex-CIA guys who are from the same organization that have been covering this shit up for a century? Or maybe someone who is too scared to reveal themselves might be telling the truth as well. I don't know. I'll leave that one up to you guys. Let me know in the chat, though, how you're feeling about the 4chan whistleblower. We're going to keep moving on, but I'm interested to hear people's thoughts on that. So again, just quickly, a little bit of revision. We've seen these on the channel before. We're not going to stay on them for too long, but I think, you know, any good scholar should do a little bit of revision, okay, especially in these crazy times. So we've got orbs here depicted, Crucifixion of Christ. This is a painting from the 1300s. You've not only are these orbs in the sky, but they have these small beings in them, depicted in this religious context. And we've also got this one here. I think this is like 1400s. Another golden, intricately decorated, shining orb in the sky. You've got the celestial phenomenon in Nuremberg, Germany, 1561. Orbs, but not just orbs. You've got these long, I think they were referred to as reeds of grass on the official account here. All kinds of shapes and sizes there. And then you've got these 16th century paintings, which it's going to brighten up my light a bit. These 16th century paintings, which don't have a lot of context to them, unfortunately. But, I mean, a picture tells 1,000 words, right? You can see all these people staring up at the sky at these giant balls, which seem to be, you know, emitting some kind of energy, right? So it's interesting. And again, it's good to just recap on all this stuff, give ourselves a little bit of background and a bit of context because we're going deep. So like I said, this is going to be a chronological timeline from, we're going to start in 1887 and we're going to work our way right up to the Buga Sphere. And then I'm going to give you my thoughts on things. So let's kick it off with this article that I found, okay? This is July 1887, over 80 years before even the Betz Sphere. Okay, this story is about a shiny steel blue sphere that fell out of the sky with a flash of white light. And the interesting part is that it had inscribed on it pictures, a 4-pointed star, and a creature, which we'll get to. Okay, so again, this is 1887, and I have read through this, but it's written like it was 1887. So the English is not really how we speak now. So forgive me if I sound a little bit challenged while reading this. A Georgia doctor, Finston oh, wow. Okay. Sorry. A Georgia doctor finds an aerolite with figures and letters engraved on it. Clayton, Georgia, July 23rd. A phenomenon unparalleled in the annals of astronomical science occurred here one day last week, which from the light it throws upon the hitherto open question of the habitability of other planets. Wow, I should have grabbed a coffee before I started this. This will prove of great value to scientists. Okay, it's going to be smoother from here, I'm sorry. At 7:45 p.m., there fell near a town a spherical metal ball or aerolite on the surface of which appears a graven characters which give conclusive evidence of it having been molded by intelligent hands. Dr. Sayers, in whose possession now is, said this evening, I was returning from a patient's house situated some 7 miles from the town where I had spent the latter part of the afternoon. Was ascending a long hill when my horse... Okay, this guy's riding a horse. Just gives you an idea how old this is. Ascending a hill when my horse suddenly pricked up its ears, and on glancing ahead, my eyes were dazzled by a brilliant white flash, resembling a lightning stroke, and immediately followed came a sharp hiss, as if of escaping steam. I knew that an aerolite had fallen, for had the flash been electrical, there would have been a clap of thunder. Driving up on the hill, I noticed that steam was issuing from the ground some few rods back from the road. On hastening to the spot, found a hole about 4 inches in diameter, from which arose considerable heated vapor. I drove home rapidly as possible, and that word's kind of missing, but basically after I picked up a shovel and returned to the spot, after half an hour of hard digging, I came upon the object of my search at a depth of about 5 feet. It was still too hot to handle, but I succeeded in getting it in my carriage by lifting it on my shovel. I noticed that it was remarkably heavy, but not until I reached my barn and removed the adhering soil did I realize what a prize I had. Instead of rough mass of meteoric iron, there appeared a smooth, perfect sphere of steel blue metal with polished surface and engraved with pictures and writings. There upon the surface of the aerolite was a deeply graven circle within which was a 4-pointed star, a representative of a bird reptile, resembling a measure of our extinct Okay, I looked up how to say this name earlier, and it was a long time ago, I forgot, but this is it here, okay? That dinosaur, that is like a bird, but a reptile at the same time. That's what they're saying this thing resembled. And a great number of smaller figures resembling those used in modern shorthand. So they're basically saying writing that looks similar to modern language, but not quite. The metal of which the ball was composed was unlike anything I'd ever seen, being about as hard as copper and entirely infusible in my Bunsen blowpipe. So they held a Bunsen burner to it and wasn't heating up. Remember that. I filed off small bits and sent them to a chemist who made the following report. Sir, I have made an analysis of the filings you sent. The metal is fusible only in the electric arc. It is a new element. Examined by the spectroscope, its vapor gives 3 fine yellow lines to the left of the D line of sodium, of broad green, one to the right of the line of barium. Okay, this is okay, the story's over. This is irrelevant science now. The interesting part is the ball is now in the possession of Dr. Sayers, but will be sent to the Smithsonian Institution in short time, where an official report will be made. And I'm sure that official report never ever came, because the Smithsonians are known for just hiding everything. So there's that. 1887, a blue metallic sphere was found, composed of metals unknown to Earth and unable to be heated up with a Bunsen burner. Interesting stuff there. $2 in from Bleak13. Remote viewing got me hooked on this story. Thank you for the $2, my man. So we're going to shuffle forward a little bit from here. That's the only one from that century. We're now going to go take a look at the Foo Fighters. Now, I'm not talking about the band. I love Dave Grohl, bit of Everlong, okay, the acoustic version, great track. But no, we're talking about the things that were seen in World War II following and harassing the planes, the fighter pilots. There are people out there who have tried to debunk this or come up with suggestions as to like a prosaic explanation, and that may be fair for some of them, but I think it's pretty clear that not all of it was that, and that something weird was going on, because as we're going to see throughout this video, these things seem to show up in times of chaos, in times of conflict. Funnily enough, that sounds a lot like the 4chan whistleblower who says they're like a white blood cell for the planet protecting itself from itself, right? So, this is about 1940 to 1942, the Foo Fighters. Another tenner coming in from my man Luigi. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. So let's take a look at this little clip here about the Foo Fighters.
After the famous Kenneth Arnold UFO sighting of 1947, the U.S. Air Force established the first ever government office for investigating UFOs. However, it was not the first time that a U.S. government body had encountered reports of airborne anomalies. Throughout the Second World War, both Allied and German air crews saw strange moving lights in the sky that they called Foo Fighters. The many extant reports of these things suggest that military brass was anything but unfamiliar with UFOs by the summer of 1947, and may have already had a plan in place to manage public perception of the UFO phenomenon. It's not possible to establish when exactly the first sighting of a Foo Fighter occurred, but a report from the British Royal Air Force, or RAF, from August 1940 indicated that intelligence officers were already struggling to understand a number of peculiar incidents reported by crewmen, and wondered if the Germans were experimenting with new technologies. In September of 1942, the Operational Research Section of the British Air Ministry produced a report on some recent pyrotechnic activity over Germany, and mentioned
Tom NPS says, doesn't the Kenneth Arnold sighting look like the B-2 bombers? So he's referring to what we saw at the start there, which I believe is called the Horton Wing, which was maybe like you could say an experimental kind of aircraft that was being developed by the Germans, which, yes, Tom, looks a lot like the B-2 bombers, doesn't it? Funnily enough, a lot of those engineers and scientists who probably are responsible for the Horton Wing probably ended up in the United States through Operation Paperclip. So I think that's why, but I don't want to say too much more about that, because I actually want to do a deep dive into the B-2 bomber, the B-21, and the technology that might be behind it in plain sight that we're not told about. But that's a whole other rabbit hole. We'll keep going for now.
4 distinct phenomena. One involved balls of fire that seemed to drip multicolored fragments for 30 seconds or so before burning out in the air.
Remember that bit.
Another involved colored balls of light that flew 6,000 or 7,000 feet into the air. The writers concluded that the Germans had been firing objects into the air with mortars, or on rockets, but noted that none of the launches had ever harmed a plane or coincided with an enemy attack. On November 28, 1942, an RAF bomber crew saw what seemed to be a solid object with 4 evenly spaced pairs of red lights attached. The crew estimated it to be 200 to 300 feet long and traveling up to 500 miles per hour. Another report from May of 1943 noted that one crew saw what they described as a reddish-orange meteor outside of Duisburg in western Germany that flew from north to south, falling as it went. 3 times during the observation, the object emitted a burst that produced a green star.
So there, a couple of things I want you guys to remember from that one, especially. Also note how these orbs also seem to kind of be rigidly structured together. I think that's important to think about. And also the fact that they're dripping. And again, that these things are showing up in times of conflict. $2 again from my man Toxic Fart. He says the symbols mean if found, please return to. Imagine if we decoded all of these hieroglyphics and it just said like made in China. Susie Sunshine, you're up. And Luigi, I think he forgot to attach his message last time, says, Josh, have you seen the sightings app? What do you think about it? I think I have seen that app, but I haven't looked at it properly. But I've heard about it and I know about it. But yeah, sorry, can't give you a good answer on that. But it's probably worth taking a look. So we're now so that was probably early 40s, World War II, and this is kind of staying in the same era. We're going to be looking at a clip of the Battle of LA. I've talked about this a little bit on the channel before. It's not as well known as it should be for what it was, but basically air raid sirens sounded and anti-aircraft guns rained fire on this light in the sky that was described as moving like a blimp across the coast of California during the war. So everyone was pushed inside their homes. Anti-aircraft rifles were just going ham on this light. Obviously, nothing happened. Bullets were just going through it. Eventually, the shooting stopped, and the light just slowly kind of veered off. Okay, so we're going to take a look at that clip. Bleak13, welcome back to the Weirdos Club, a returning member. Can we see some Polarity, love, and hearts in the chat for Bleak? And also, Susie chimes in, as promised, with a $3. Thank you, Susie. All right. Now, we got to open up just a different window here, so just bear with me. We want the 1942 Battle of LA. Please and thank you. Here we go. Let's just get that out of the way. All right, here we go.
February 25th. Once again, Colombia's correspondents in world capitals and in the fighting zones in the Western Pacific are ready to give you the latest news direct by shortwave radio. And now for news of our own West Coast, we take you to Los Angeles and the report of Byron Palmer.
Anti-aircraft guns went into action against unidentified aircraft in the Los Angeles area shortly after 3 a.m. Pacific wartime this morning. Blackout ordered by the 4th Interceptor Command at 2:25 a.m. The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach. Army officials declined to comment on the possibility that the object might have been a blimp. However, it required nearly 30 minutes to travel some 25 miles, far slower than an airplane. Watchers on the rooftop of the Columbia Broadcasting Building in the heart of Hollywood could plainly see the flashes of guns and searchlights sweeping the skies in a wide arc along the coastal area.
So it's important to note there that they're saying this thing was, the way it moved was far slower than an airplane, and it hovered while they were shooting at it. It was just staying there. So it's stationary and then drifted away slower than an airplane could move, or without maintaining altitude. And again, this is 1942. Just think of the technology we had then.
Concussion of the shells could be felt in downtown Los Angeles, 15 miles away. U.S. Army planes quickly took to the dark skies, but whether they contacted the object has not been announced. Army officials say they will not comment until they receive a full report of the action. Although some watchers say they saw airplanes in the air, semi-official sources say they probably were the U.S. Army's pursuit. Several observers say they saw one or more planes spotlighted by 20 or 30 searchlights. The object moved southward, presumably over Huntington Park at the western edge of Los Angeles, and on southward to about Long Beach on the coast. By 3:30 a.m., observers said the object appeared to be over the south of Long Beach. Searchlights closely followed the object down the coast and kept it centered in their glare.
There we go. The time, we don't need to watch the rest of that. You guys understand. This is, you know, to be happening in LA like that, such a central place, and for it to not be talked about that much. I mean, obviously it's not talked about much because it's unexplainable, and the people who like to hide this stuff don't like to talk about the unexplainable because it makes people ask questions. People saying it came from Antarctica, Operation High Jump, maybe, maybe. I mean, not long after this, they sent a whole lot of military power down to Antarctica for some reason. Apparently, it was just for a bit of science, just a casual bit of science, as you do with 4,000 troops and 30 helicopters and whatever. All right, so we're going to jump forward about 10 years now. We're going to go to Tuscany, Italy for the next one. Let's just shut that off for now. So this is Tuscany, Italy. This is a famous case, and I really like this one because it's a mass sighting. And I think mass sightings always carry a little bit more value to them, right? Because you've got thousands of people witnessing this thing, and thousands of people, especially in 1954, well before the internet, thousands of people don't just all... They don't all just happen to come up with the same lie on the same night. You know what I mean? They clearly saw something, and people were different back then as well. Okay, people were very different back then. You know, no one was chasing Instagram clout. No one was trying to be a hero like that. Is a different world. Okay, and this is also, I think, don't quote me on this, but one of the earlier mentions of angel hair and things dripping and coming out of these UAPs, right? And we're going to get into that more into the show. So let's check this out. This is in Tuscany, Italy, over a soccer match between, I think, Fiorentina in 1954.
A little known UFO event took place over the skies of Italy in 1954. Such was the shock of such an incident that a soccer match involving Italian giants Fiorentina had to be abandoned because of a UFO hovering precariously over the stadium. To the fanatical supporters in the stadium, this was unheard of. Just wait till you hear this. Dubbed the Fiorentina UFO incident, this was the first in a huge wave of incidents that spanned across much of Europe and is still an unsolved mystery to this day. Reported in the local newspapers the following day, it caused much of a stir at the time, and no one really could explain what this was. This was the largest scale UFO sighting of its time, thought to have been witnessed by upwards of 20,000 people, describing an egg-shaped flying object dispersing gold and silver glitter as it slowly crept across the sky. Perhaps the cloaking technology failed on this object, and the operators were not aware they had become visible. Testimonies describe many of these objects through the course of many hours, and there was reports of a sticky, shiny materials falling to the ground. Up to a week after this initial incident, there was more reports of these incidents in the surrounding area, with a strange substance reported across much of Florence. People who touched the sticky substance reported that it evaporated in their hands as soon as they touched it.
Wow! What a crazy UAP sighting! Sorry, I do like doing accents and that. I don't mean any offense, okay? It just sounded funny. Like Joel Quinn said, he sounds like he should be a ring announcer, and I agree. Someone else also said they love angel hair pasta. Yes, me too. And I did also think of that with that name. It's quite funny. What I wanted to show you about that is that it reminds me of something. It reminds me of something. Love American Josh. Look, I'm not the best at accents, but I do enjoy doing them, and I do think I have a little bit of a repertoire behind me, so you might see them come out every now and then. And if I get to the States next year, which I'm planning to do, I'll try and give you guys my best impression of all the different states, because I know, you know, there's a little bit of a different hint and twinge depending where you are, and I think that's funny. Some people might not. That's okay. I'm weird. So yes, getting back to the angel hair and UAPs that seem to drip stuff, what it reminds me of is this. So these are, I believe, and someone may be able to correct me if I'm wrong here, these, I believe, are known as the Afghani Reapers. I think was the name that they had. Yeah, Afghan Reapers, I believe these photos had. And they look a lot like the Jellyfish UAP, right? And I'm specifically talking about the Jellyfish that Jeremey Corbell released, okay? It's interesting that Skywatcher are releasing their own version of a Jellyfish, which admittedly does look not like this, but they've decided to use the same name. I find that kind of strange because it's obviously confusing. Like, that's a confusing decision that they've made, and they knew that these were already a thing and people were calling them a jellyfish. So, and I'm not saying it is, but like, is that like you're trying to like take that and be like, no, this is a jellyfish. Don't look at that. Don't worry about that. This is a jellyfish. Look at this. Look at this. I don't know. It's just weird. Like, they could have come up with something else that worked fine, but they deliberately decided to like kind of take a name of something else, which is strange. But we're going to look at a comparison with these a little bit later. But it's also interesting, right, that if we think about what the 4chan whistleblower said, in that the facility is running out of materials and that some of the craft or UAPs that are being ejected from the machine are coming out unfinished and are not operating properly. That, to me, and I'm not saying it is, but, you know, we're just theorizing here, that looks like something that is unfinished, is not operating properly, and has had a malfunction in its manufacturing. I could be wrong with that, but I'm just saying it kind of looks weird. All right, so we're going to jump forward about 5 years. We're going to jump forward to 1959, and this is actually a clip from my podcast with a good friend of mine, Reese Dalton Morgan. So he was on my channel earlier in the year, and he actually interviewed Ross Coulthart a couple of weeks ago. I covered it on the channel. Hopefully you guys went and watched that. So this is a clip from my interview with Reese. He was kind of telling me the backstory of his grandfather, Tom Dalton Morgan, who ran the Woomera test range, and he had his own UFO sighting there of an actual circular craft in 1959, I believe, which led to the cancellation of a rocket. Led to the cancellation of a rocket launch, which I'll tell you more about in a moment. But in the same year, they found this metallic sphere on the range. So I'll let Reese talk about it, and then we'll go into a bit more depth. Run me through that, from sort of who's involved, when it happened, and what was sort of discovered on this thing.
There was a case.
I said I wasn't going to have to listen to myself anymore. Here we are.
At the same time as when my grandfather had his UFO sighting at Woomera.
So this is the same year?
Same year, same rocket, the Black Knight rocket, right? So my grandfather was head of the Black Knight rocket tests. So he was the principal officer in charge of range operations. So his job was essentially the bloke who makes the call whether you push the red button or not and launch the rocket.
The old studio? Yeah, that's Polarity Season 1. We're in Season 2 now. Yes, Tom, we're talking about Woomera.
And during that time, you know, there had been obviously lots of claims and cases and sightings of UFOs throughout Woomera. But in this book by Timothy Good, who was a British UFO researcher, he'd developed a contact who worked at Woomera, who was an engineer. And it was in 1958 or 1959 from Timothy Good's account. But he explained that he was assigned to the Black Knight rocket. And during this time,
Lewis, what? Your uncle's name is UFO? That's weird.
He was stationed at the facility at Woomera, not the actual rocket launch site, where they would kind of work on the rocket parts and, you know, basically do the engineering side of things. And there had been this sighting of a silver metallic ball, which was located outside the trial zone of the Black Knight rocket. But it had been involved with a helicopter that was searching for a missing girl, because Woomera had families stay at the home facilities there for people that were employed there. And this missing girl had gone, you know, off the grid, and they were out looking for her, and they discovered this metallic dark silver ball.
So they were looking from like an aerial position from a chopper.
Yeah.
And whilst looking down at the ground, they spotted this silver ball.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they obviously collected that and assumed it to be part of the Black Knight rocket. So they took it obviously to the engineering lab where, you know, the engineers were to examine it. because they believed that that big metallic ball, whatever it was, 2 feet, quite a large object, probably I imagine a little larger than a basketball maybe, and they were taking it to the Black Knight because they believed it was a part of the Black Knight rocket. And when they examined it, I think they realized pretty quickly from the account that this was something very peculiar. And when they examined it, and they did lots of tests on it, so they realized that when they actually lifted it up, it was abnormally light. So you could pick it up by one hand apparently. And this was a solid metallic, obviously.
It looked like from what I understand, just like a giant piece of metal.
Yeah,
right?
Perfectly round metallic ball, essentially.
And what I found really interesting was that they were not able to dent, scratch, break, nothing, but also holding an oxy torch to it, and it did not heat up. That is extremely interesting. They were able to put their hand on the ball right after they'd held an oxy torch to it, and it was not hot. So we're hearing the same things that we heard from the very first one we looked at from 1887, where the chemist held a Bunsen burner to it and nothing. And we're getting the same report here from Reese and his grandfather, who ran the Woomera test range. This guy ran the Woomera test range. Like, I don't know if people understand that. That's like saying he ran Area 51, but the Australian equivalent. And this is in 1959. Same qualities, same properties.
Yeah, the engineer had done that several times when he'd put the oxygen torch to it. And essentially, they were like, we need to look at this closer. So they, ran more tests on it, and they determined that after obviously a range of different tests that, this was nothing that could probably be from a foreign adversary or from a rocket. And it apparently sat there for a few days from the account. But then very shortly after, it was claimed by the Americans. So there was an American observer that had gone in and with sort of range security staff, taken this object and brought it under the jurisdiction of the United States.
There you go. Woomera, very, very interesting place. And yes, that's Reese. I'm going to read you a bit from his blog, but honestly, the guy is like a phenomenal researcher. Like, I think, if he continues doing what he's doing, he's going to go places as a UFO researcher in Australia, 100%. Just quickly, missed a couple of super chats there. $20 coming in from Artie. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Josh. You're welcome. Thank you for the $20. I appreciate that massive super chat. And a tenner from Manuel Ventura. Love the channel. Keep going. Thank you, my man. I appreciate the support. So I just wanted to read a quick little excerpt from Reese's blog, which is massive, by the way. And I'll link it below after the video's done. If anyone wants to go and read the full thing, it's about Tom's whole experience running the Woomera test range. He says, while working at Woomera in 1959, the witness revealed an object was recovered on the Woomera range. It was alleged to have been spotted outside the trial zone by a helicopter involved in a search for a missing child. Through my research, I discovered on January 30th, 1959, a helicopter was in fact dispatched from Woomera range to search for a missing boy. Nicholas Bannon was the child's name, near Wilpena Pound. The recovered object was eventually brought to the workshop where the witness was employed at Woomera. Because of its presumed origin, it was a sphere about 2 feet 9 inches in diameter. So I'm not sure where that would sit on Patrick Jackson's sphere network theory. Maybe like a type 4, maybe a type 4. Its color was mid-gray metallic, somewhat darkened. Sounds a little bit like the Buga Sphere. It was a very light, again, Buga Sphere. He said it was disproportionately light and easily lifted by one person with one hand. So if you've got a ball of metal that's almost the size of like a beach ball, and it's just easy to lift out with one arm outstretched. And by the way, this is obviously in Australia in 1959. I don't know, no, I don't even think that this is like the same one that Ross is referring to, but it's interesting that it's, they're two Australian cases. It could be, though. I don't know. The initial assumption was that it was part of the Black Knight, but for that was the only missile there that could have contained anything of that size. After being disclaimed by the Black Knight experts, it was then assumed to be Russian or American. It was alleged when the engineers examined it, they soon realized that the technology required to produce the object did not exist. Hard tools could not even mark it. Okay, so this thing couldn't even be dented, scratched, with the kind of tools that would be available to the military at a nuclear test range, which you could imagine would be pretty heavy duty. So that was 1959. I really wish I made some taglines to kind of go with this. So as we're talking about it, people stick with me on what year we're at, but I'll keep trying to remind you. We're now shifting forward a few years to 1962, and we're going to be looking at the tag-alongs that Harold Malmgren spoke about, and we're going to sort of touch, and which is kind of referring to and touching on the Blue Gill triple prime nuclear test, which was like a kind of on the, I think, sort of between like the lower atmosphere and say like a low Earth orbit, I believe is the area. Somewhere in like low space, they were testing what happens when you detonate a nuclear weapon. And people like Tom DeLonge have sort of hinted at the idea that they knew what they were doing with that, and they were intentionally trying to I think the quote is, swat bugs out of the sky. So they knew that doing this up there was potentially going to knock some of these craft out of the sky. So let's flick over to here, and hopefully we get...
Some of the days it was while we were busy with Cuba.
Yeah, it was during the Cuban Missile Crisis, actually, the Blue Gill triple prime. So it was October of 1962, right?
So...
What a code name. I know, Blue Gill triple prime.
I got a report, because I'm in charge of this new project, the same report that went to JFK. Now, you can assume when JFK, it was read by McGeorge Bundy, that's his job. I knew if it must have been read by McNamara and John McNaughton, the general counsel, because they were all interactive. And almost certainly LBJ, because he's vice president. Anyway, lo and behold, they dashed down. I said, wait a minute, I'm puzzled here. In the report you've given me, you have videos of taking down this incoming missile with especially enhanced X-ray projection system. But when you did that, you noticed that there had been some object that had appeared on the screen and joined and tagged along following the incoming missile down.
By the way, can I just interject? Because for me, and I kind of got my dad a little up to speed on the whole, why is Congress pursuing non-human intelligence? Why are they passing whistleblower legislation? And so when we started talking about this, and so he says there's this orb around the missile.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Again.
So didn't you think that was weird? And I realized that actually, I think that the people of that generation were so accustomed to seeing them that they knew it wasn't Russian. They knew it wasn't, in those days, it was never going to be Chinese. They knew it wasn't a threat. So Dad said, yeah, we called it a tag-along.
Wow.
I'm like, a tag-along? Like,
They were so used to seeing these orbs around their missile launchers that they had nicknames for them. And it was just like a whatever kind of thing. Some people are saying he's hard to understand. Yeah, there is subtitles there. Jesse put subtitles on the video. Harold Malmgren passed away I think within weeks of this interview. So it probably has a bit to do with why he's hard to understand. He's not feeling good. AG said Tom has been posting a lot of cryptic stuff recently. Interesting. I have said I want to do a Tom DeLonge deep dive like this, and I will. I'm a Blink-182 fanboy. Love Tom DeLonge, even though he maybe have been used as a puppet. I'm not sure. Let's continue.
didn't you ask what it was? And he sort of replied in such a way that I realized nobody asked any questions at that time. And they were probably encouraged not to ask any questions.
When I saw this object,
here we go,
which I call a tag-along.
That's what you would call them, tag-alongs. Wow.
What else?
So that it's so casual that you would just call them tag-alongs.
So I think they were so inured to seeing them. They were like, yeah, tag-along.
There you go. Just a tag-along, you know? It's just another bloody tag-along. See him all the time. Someone's saying, is Reese's name, Dalton Morgan, Welsh? So I believe it's I don't know about Welsh, but it's definitely British. And his dad was a fighter pilot for the RAF. So he was like a Top Gun pilot, by the way. He had go watch the interview I did with him, but he says he had like one of the most confirmed kills as a fighter pilot, taking down German planes in the war. Yeah, like high level, and he was sent to Australia to run Woomera test range. And he was sent under the cover that he was coming to be like a logging manager, like a logging company. Like some Top Gun pilot just decided he suddenly wanted to be a logger. Like that was his cover. If you want more on that story, go listen to the podcast. Go to Reese's channel afterwards. I'll link it below. He goes by the UF Aussie. Great bloke and really, really good research on the Australian side of things as well. So after this interview, if you saw my video just the other day, Ross and Jesse both they seem like they kind of know, but they both allude heavily to the fact that they both think that Malmgren was also CIA, but he never said that. But there are a lot of things that point to him actually being CIA, but he took that to his grave. And like I said in my last video, does that, I think that just means, I don't think that means he's dishonest, but you naturally have to take it with some kind of pinch of salt. It could be truth wrapped in a little bit of a twist. Who knows? Richard Dolan next. So Richard Dolan went just live on his YouTube channel, just kind of touching on this, speaking specifically about the material that Harold Malmgren, who I don't know if I mentioned, for anyone who doesn't know, was a senior advisor to 4 US presidents. And on that podcast, he said that, he touched the UFO material that came down from Bluegill Triple Prime himself. He held it.
There, he describes Lawrence Preston Gies, who was the director of the Albuquerque division of the Atomic Energy Commission, who met with him. And just for the record, Gies was also the grandfather of Jeffrey Bezos, the owner of Amazon. Yeah. So Gies produces recovered material from the downed object. He shows Malmgren material that had fallen from what they call the tag-along, this object, and he allows Malmgren to physically handle this material. During the interview, Jesse's asking about the physical sensation of handling this material, and Malmgren says it felt weird because it didn't feel like anything. There was no typical tactile feedback you would expect when handling an object. He said when he was handling the pieces, they seemed, it wasn't hot or cold. He almost had no feeling when he described this. But he said he seemed to telepathically receive a communication from the object. Seems crazy, but I will just tell you, in my own research, this is not the first time I have heard such a thing. Just saying. So he heard words in his head, although he later could not recall the exact content. He felt these communications were important, though. He believed the material may have implanted ideas directly into his subconscious. That's just what he said. So Gies apparently is considering this all as a test because he wanted to see if Malmgren would experience this mental reaction to the material. Apparently Malmgren passed this test. So after this experience, Malmgren was deemed ready for further information. He subsequently received a full briefing on what were called other world technologies from Richard Bissell, who had been deputy director of plans for the CIA, and he had been involved in designing Area 51, for the record.
So, by the way, can we put a UFO in the chat if you love Richard Dolan? Like, what an OG. Just really good vibe, good, honest guy. good researcher. Love Richard. Interesting there that he says that Malmgren was given these pieces to see if he would have this specific reaction, which was kind of like a telepathic communication, like a mental communication or reaction, which is exactly what I think it's Jim Penniston, the Rendlesham Forest case, I think in 1980, when he touched the craft, there was some kind of mental download. And this is interestingly also what we have been told happened to Chris Bledsoe. Once his case went to MUFON and all of these Tim Taylors and all these weird NASA, CIA people start showing up at his door, he and his whole family, including his kids, Ryan Bledsoe and the others, were given some kind of material, I believe. And we'll try and recall this correctly, but I believe they were given something to hold in each hand. And Ryan Bledsoe said, once you had it in each hand, it was like an electric current was going through your body. Not in like a, I'm dying and getting electrocuted, but in a way of like, you can just feel some kind of like static charge through your body. I don't know about the mental side of things, but there was some kind of reaction with the material. So similarities, right? That's all I'm kind of really highlighting there, is that Chris Bledsoe's allegedly approached by CIA, given materials to see how you react. You pass the test, we tell you more. That's what Dolan is kind of saying happened with Malmgren as well, and a similar idea happening at Rendlesham Forest. Mish with 20 pounds. That's like 30 kangaroo dollars. Thank you, Mish. She says, you are very much appreciated, Josh. Best on YouTube. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the support. It means a lot. So we are now going to jump forward 2 years to 1964. And this case is said to be an actual UFO shape. I could see people in the chat before saying, what happened to UFOs? What happened to flying saucers? Well, we are going to sort of touch on them a little bit today because, as I said, the 4chan whistleblower, we're kind of touching on all these theories together here. And the 4chan whistleblower says that, it can be craft. It's not just orbs. It can be craft. It can be anything. That all these things are made with a single use purpose to go do a job. They come back and they're recycled, craft included, sources included. So let's take a look at this 2008 clip of Bob Jacobs on TV talking about the missile test that he saw, that he was instructed to film, where a UFO appeared and deactivated it mid-flight.
What were you filming and where were you?
I was officer in charge of optical instrumentation at Vandenberg Air Force Base from 1963 to 66.
That's
our job
California?
was to photograph. That's California, so right there on the coast.
Right.
And our job was to photograph with high-speed instrumentation every missile launch from Vandenberg going down the test range. They wanted to find out if we could figure out a place to put a telescope where we could get a side view of the missile so that we could see all three stages of powered flight. So I went up to Big Sur, California, up on a U.S. Forest Service road on Anderson Peak, and I installed a telescopic sight up there. The Air Force flew in a huge catadioptric telescope from the Cape. It was built by Dr. Walter Manning at Boston University. They put the telescope up there, and with that thing, which had a focal length of 2,500 inches, we photographed an Atlas missile raising up out of the fog cover and flying down range. We got all three stages of powered flight, and as the dummy warhead and the package flew on down range, we were all celebrating the fact that we had seen the thing and accomplished the mission. When I got back to the base with the film the next day, I was called into the office of Major Florence J. Mansman, and there were three people in gray suits standing in there. There was a 16-millimeter camera and a screen set up. Major Mansman said, "Lieutenant, sit down and watch this." And he turned down the lights, turned on the camera on the projector, and the film came on. And I recognized it as the film that we'd shot at Big Sur the previous day. Toward the end of the flight, I was looking at Major Mansman saying, "Pretty good stuff, huh, sir?" And suddenly he said, "Just watch this." And as I watched, the warhead, the dummy warhead, the chaff that was put out in front of it as a decoy to deflect the Russian anti-missile tracking radar. Everything was flying along, and suddenly, in the same direction this stuff was flying at about 8,000 miles an hour, an object came into the frame, shot a beam of light at the warhead, flew up to the top, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew around the direction it was flying, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew down, shot another beam of light at the warhead, and flew out the same way it came in.
Well, I don't see. Why didn't you see this when you were shooting it?
Well, it was 600 to 800 miles away from us.
Oh, I got you.
What I find interesting about this case is there are so many versions that I've seen of this, like recreations, which we'll look at next, and like this, and I've seen another version too, but I don't think any of them are. I think they're all recreations, because I'm pretty sure this footage has like never seen the light of day, and this is just testimony. I'm not saying that's a reason to not believe it, but I'm just trying to point out, I don't think this is real footage. But if anyone thinks that I'm wrong, let me know. Because it'd be awesome if it is, but I'm pretty sure it's a recreation, just letting you guys know.
Well, first of all, Major Mansman said to me, "What was that? Were you guys screwing around up there?" I said, "No, sir." And he said, "Then tell me what that was." And I said, "We got a UFO." And he said, "Lieutenant, you are never to speak of this again."
So there you go. That's Bob Jacobs, and he had his, like anyone who's spoken out, he had his career ruined. I think his military records deleted. Like, that's what people don't realize. It's like, with the whole Bob Lazar thing, people go like, "Oh, but he's got no records at MIT or whatever." It's like, yeah, dude, if the CIA don't want you to have records at MIT or wherever the hell you studied, like, you're not going to have records, okay? Like, this isn't, what do you think this is? What do you think this is, bro? Like, if they want to delete your history, they can. Wake up. So here's another clip of him about 15 years later speaking on the Matt Ford show. Contra says this was in a recent Netflix too. Yep, this was in Investigation Alien by George Knapp. Yes, and he's in the final episode. He's like, Bob Jacobs is in the very first episode of that series. George Knapp gets on the phone and he's like got this new guy who wants to come forward or whatever, which is weird because it wasn't really new, but whatever. And then at the last episode, it kind of foreshadows it, and it's Bob Jacobs, and he's super emotional. Yeah, he's crying because his life was kind of ruined by this, by speaking truth. And, imagine that. Like, imagine speaking what is truth. Like, you saw it. And not only do people not believe you, which would already be kind of frustrating and difficult enough, but you're humiliated for it. You're humiliated, and your life is actually ruined. Like, your history is deleted. And everyone just thinks you're a fraud, which, in the Majestic 12 documents that we read through on this channel, like plan A, when someone has a UFO sighting, is discredit and like essentially ruin their life. It's in the, MJ12 documents, debatable how real they are, but that is literally plan A. It is like humiliate, just ruin their life, ruin their reputation, and get on with the cover up. Woohoo. All right, here's Bob Jacobs 15 years later. This is him speaking on the Matt Ford show, and I'm just showing this one as an example of people sticking to their story over time, and I think there's a lot to be said for that. People don't make up silly lies, have the whole world laugh in their face and humiliate them, and then keep saying it. Like, if I decided to make up a lie and everyone was like, "Dude, you're lying, you're a loser, I hate you," I wouldn't keep going, nah, I did, I swear. I would probably go like, okay, I shouldn't have said that. That was so dumb. It was so dumb, I shouldn't have said that. Do you know what I mean? Not that I would do that anyway, but like, just the whole concept of sticking to a lie that no one believes is stupid. So here he is 15 years later, Matt Ford show. And I'll just note what it says here. Later in this interview, it says, Bob Jacobs says that Lou Elizondo has seen the real footage while he was working at ATIP. Let's check this out.
Down a dummy nuclear warhead. That's what happened.
Now, speaking to Robert Hastings, and he was suggesting that we show the animated portion of his documentary, and I want to play this here because it reinforces or sort of illustrates what you saw. And I'm curious how you feel, how accurate you would say this simulation is, or this whatever you want to call it. Anyway, here it is.
That is the nose cone opening up, the chaff flying out in front of it, and then the warhead coming out, and see a little rocket motor on the bottom of it, ignites it, and it shoots it into a slightly higher orbit than the chaff. That would certainly fool the Russians. We could go down and obliterate Moscow. This is a better idea of what it looked like to the camera, because this came into the frame. It was a saucer-shaped object with a dome on top of it. It shot a beam of light at the warhead, hit it, flew up over it as I described, hit it with another beam of light, flew in front of it, hit another beam of light, and another beam of light from the bottom, and zipped out of the frame. The warhead tumbled out of the frame. Now,
go ahead, sorry.
That's that animation is exaggerated size. The object to us on our eye was relatively small. That would be what you saw in there would be if we could magnify the small object, that's what it would have looked like.
And the light that came out of it, did it appear like how you would characterize a laser? Like, what was the quality of it? Was it something you had seen before?
I'd never seen anything like this light, this particular light. It wasn't a laser because it wasn't straight. It wasn't a directed energy beam. It was more like miniature lightning bolts, or like a plasma, because it shivered as it went.
A plasma? There's that word again. Cat Simpson says, I've lost too many people because they refuse to believe me. Well, Cat, I feel like maybe in a couple of years, those people might be sitting in their homes thinking, Cat Simpson was right. Maybe they'll come crawling back to you. So now I thought about this when I was making it, and guys, we've got so much more to get through. We're going to have to put an honorable mention here because I don't have it in the show. I don't have any clips to show you, unfortunately. We're going to have to put an honorable mention here for 1967 Malmgren Air Force Base with Captain Bob Salas, who was referenced in the recent Wall Street Journal article, right? So this was the guy who was in charge of 10 nuclear missiles, I think in like, Malmgren, I don't know, is it in like Montana? Somewhere like up there, I think. And they all got turned off by a giant red orb. Everyone in the missile silos panicked. Everyone was freaking out. Multiple people saw it. And that's been a famous case. Giant red orb disarmed 10 nuclear weapons. Sean Kirkpatrick and the Wall Street Journal recently came out and said that was just us testing secret electromagnetic technology, which is just so stupid on so many levels. Jesse Michaels, Ross Coulthart have all done videos speaking about why, and they do a much better job than me in like articulating it and getting into like the nitty gritty of why. But I can tell you my version why it's stupid, because you don't just play tricks and do tests on people who can press the button for a nuclear missile. 10 of them, actually. You also don't just do tests with EMPs around nuclear weapons. You know, tests imply you're checking what's going to happen. You know, you don't know what the result's going to be. You don't do that with nuclear weapons around and people who can launch them. Like, that is just so fundamentally stupid that it's kind of embarrassing. It's almost more embarrassing to say that and try and admit that as like what actually happened. Like, it's very embarrassing if you think that. D says it's just a prank, bro. Bob Salas, it's just a prank, just a prank. Okay, so let's keep moving. Honorable mention there for Bob Salas, 1967. We are going to jump to 1974 now, and we're going to look at the Betz Sphere, which is probably, other than maybe the first thing we looked at, is probably the most similar thing that we have to the Buga Sphere, which is what we're going to get to at the end here. So I'll do a quick little read of this post, and we're going to have a little interview with a member of the Betz family. So I'll read this to you quickly. The Betz Mystery Sphere is a strange object that the Betz family found near their home in Fort George Island, Florida in 1974. It's a metal sphere that's a little smaller than a bowling ball, okay, maybe like a type 2, diameter of 8 inches, but a solid 8 pounds heavier than even the sturdiest professional bowling balls. When the family took the sphere home, they said it started to behave by itself. Their accounts were of the sphere rolling by itself, making noises and vibrating. In In an April 1974 interview with the St. Petersburg Times, Jerry Betz said when the family dog got next to the sphere, she began to whimper and cover her ears with her paws, something I've never seen her do before. So that to me suggests that this thing was like emitting some kind of high-pitched frequency, like what maybe you could call it like a dog whistle, that the dog could hear that was like bothering it, and something that humans couldn't hear. Which is interesting, especially when you consider Skywatcher and, you know, not just because of the name dog whistle, but that whole thing is basically saying certain frequencies can call these things in or interact with them. So let's take a look at this. Make sure we got some volume.
Harder, who's our scientific expert, to say more about that.
Sorry, here we go. We're at the start now.
I have no knowledge of how the sphere itself happened to be in the place where I found it. As I've stated previously, when I found it, it was on top of the ground. It was not embedded. I saw no charred marks, no big indentations in the ground. In fact, it looks as if someone had taken it and set it in the spot. But as to how it got there, I, nor anyone else I know, has any knowledge of this.
I found it. I found it. What accent is that? Can someone help me? I'm gonna guess like, oh wait, he said Florida. I was gonna say South. That doesn't sound like when I think of Florida. I mean, I'm ignorant Australian, but that accent's very interesting. I like it. I found it.
Off the table. As I understand it, it moves around the table, won't fall off the edge. I'd like Dr. Harder, who's our scientific expert, to say more about that.
Yeah, but visually, it comes up as the fact that, you were making.
Okay, so the rest of that clip isn't very interesting, but we've got something interesting next. A lot of people, saying southern. Yeah. I love that accent. When I get to America, I want to go to Louisiana, and I want to get taken out in one of those little hovercrafts and see some gators and eat some barbecue. And I want to be around people who are like, yes, ma'am. That's what I want. Give me some of that. James Anthony says he sounds more like Louisiana. Yeah, take me there on a hovercraft right now. All right. So I'm sure all of you here, by the way, we've still got plenty to get to. This is probably going to be a long stream. We've got about 500 people watching. If you haven't yet, guys, please give the video a like. It really helps me, helps push the channel out to more people. I'm sure everyone who's watching is a fan of the Y-Files, right? Can we get some alien emojis in the chat if you're a fan of the Y-Files, please? What I've done here is the Y-Files have covered the Betz Sphere. So what I thought I'd do is I basically took I took 3 minutes just kind of summarizing the Betz Sphere and letting AJ tell the story. And the reason why I'm not watching it on his YouTube channel is because he puts music behind it, and I've just removed the background noise, so you can't hear the music. So the copyright gods do not smite me. So let's listen to the Y-Files talk about the Betz Sphere. Somewhere here.
In the spring of 1974, a large brush fire swept across the property owned by Antoine and Jerry Betz. While assessing the damage, they noticed something very out of place. Lying in the smoldering grass was a highly polished metal sphere. This became known as the Betz Sphere or the Betz Orb. Antoine and Jerry's 21-year-old son, Terry Betz, went to pick up the sphere. Although it was only 8 inches in diameter, it was extremely heavy. Then the Betz family did something with the sphere that would change their lives forever. Something that the family would come to regret. They brought it home. The Betz property was 88 acres of land, mostly used for raising trees for timber. Antoine Betz was a marine engineer. His wife Jerry was an artist, and they had 6 children. The Betz home was essentially a mansion that the family nicknamed the Castle. The Betzes were educated and well-to-do. They were not fortune and fame seekers. The Betz Sphere was just under 8 inches in diameter and weighed about 21 pounds, so slightly smaller than a bowling ball, but much heavier. The sphere had no seams, no weld marks, no signs of machining. It had a few scuffs and scratches, but no other dents or damage. It did have a 3mm triangle that was etched or stamped into it. The sphere didn't seem dangerous, so Terry brought it home and set it on his windowsill with some other collectibles, and nobody really thought much about it. But a few weeks later, that would change. Terry and a friend were in his room playing guitar when they noticed a humming sound coming from somewhere. They stopped playing, listened for the hum, and it faded away. After a minute, they shrugged and went back to playing. The humming returned. Terry walked around his room strumming the guitar. He soon realized the sphere would vibrate along with the notes he played. He played a little louder. The sphere vibrated more powerfully, and
imagine what it would have been like to be him and the sphere you found a couple of weeks ago that's just sitting on your fireplace starts moving around, starts doing things. And again, interesting that when he's playing his guitar and he's putting out, you know, sound vibrations, this thing is reacting to it. You know, again, we're hearing a lot of these same properties. Erland says, Josh, happy to be the hub of your American operations on your visit. I live in the South in Georgia. We can yes, ma'am, and yeehaw to your heart's content. That sounds like the best time. Take me all through the Deep South. I'm here for it. I'm going to have the best time in America. I know.
And started buzzing. At this point, the family dog started whining as if disturbed by the sound. Terry decided to try a couple of experiments. He gently tapped the sphere with a hammer, and it responded with a ringing sound. The way the sphere reacted to sound fascinated Terry, so he grabbed it, took it out to the living room to show his family. Everyone gathered around. Then Terry set the ball down and went to grab his hammer and his guitar. Though nobody was touching the sphere or even near it, it started to move on its own. It responded to sound, to touch, and now had the power of locomotion. When the Betz Sphere was rolled across the ground, it would roll away, stop, vibrate, and then change directions. It would then stop, vibrate, change directions again, and come back to the person who rolled it. Sometimes it rolled for just a few seconds, but sometimes for up to 5 minutes. Once it rolled for 12 minutes on its own before it finally came to a stop. At first, the Betzes thought it could be a gyroscope, which would account for the movement.
Gyroscopes don't chase people, scare poodles, or play guitar.
No, but I respect them for being skeptical. In a newspaper report, Jerry's quoted as saying,
"If you shake the ball vigorously and then place it on the ground, it feels just like a huge Mexican jumping bean which is trying to get away from you."
The Betzes figured out that the sphere had a magnetic field. A paperclip would stick to it, but could be removed easily. But if the sphere spent a lot of time rolling, the magnetic field got stronger. After rolling around for a few minutes, the lid from a mayonnaise jar stuck to it, and they couldn't pry it off. They thought maybe it could be solar-powered. The sphere seemed to be more active when exposed to sunlight. When set in the sun, they could feel a gentle vibration and hear a low hum, as if there was a motor inside. When they brought the sphere back inside, it stayed warm for 3 entire days. After a few days of this, a family friend reached out to the Jacksonville Journal, who reluctantly sent a photographer. That photographer arrived a skeptic, but he left a believer.
There we go. Love that from AJ. Interesting part there is when he talks about how this thing had its own magnetic field and it felt like a jumping bean. And I don't know if anyone's ever tried to like push 2 magnets together that don't want to go. I know that feeling, and a lot of people are saying, I wish I had a Borb. I wish I had a pet Borb. I do. You can get yourself a pet Borb off Amazon. And so that thing is, it's kind of hard to tell, unfortunately, but it's levitating. It's one of those magnetic things. And I'm bringing it up because I felt that same thing, right? Like you can't push it. If it doesn't want to go, it doesn't want to go. Or it snaps to it. It's kind of weird, but yeah, you can grab a Borb off Amazon on special.
In the spring of 1974.
No, you've had your time, AJ. All right, so that was the Betz Sphere. We also had a $10 super chat come in from my man Jay Varga, who is always showing support on all the content that we do. Jay, thank you. I always see that and I appreciate it, my man. He says, the Betz Sphere shows the Buga Sphere who his daddy is. They might be related. It could actually be Auntie Betz Sphere. I don't know where I'm going with that, but thank you, man. I appreciate that. So we've got one more video from the 20th century, and then we're going to be jumping to 2011. Any guesses in the chat for what we're going to be looking at in 2011? This is one of my most favorite and totally underrated UAP sightings. And I'm really excited to show this just in case there's anyone who's never seen it before. This thing's incredible. But the first thing we're going to look at here is from 1976. And this is, let me just pull it up here. Let me swim through my mountains of browser windows that I have here. The Concorde. the Concorde, the famous Concorde. There is footage of orbs or an orb flying around the Concorde. Super interesting. This one was dropped into our Discord today, by the way, by Jared, who may still be in the chat. He was in here earlier. But I've also had a lot of help and a lot of information for a lot of the stuff that came in today from Slothy. So thank you, Slothy, Jared, for anyone. That's what I love about having a community with you people who are weird, just like me, and are very interested in this stuff. Because in our Discord, people just post stuff and we can kind of pull the data together, and that's how we're able to do awesome things like this. So if you haven't yet, the link is just below. It's a community. It's like an open chat room for different topics. Come and join. Everyone's welcome. In fact, after this, I may stream an episode of Stargate SG-1, episode 2, season 1, because we watched episode 1 the other night. Okay, enough yapping. Let's look at this video of an orb at the look next to the Concorde. Look at that plane too, by the way. I think this plane had its first flight, I'm gonna guess, like 1969. Late 60s. We'll play that again because it's a short video. And I mean, like, this thing, for anyone who doesn't know, the Concorde was, I guess still kind of is technically, the fastest passenger jet ever made, with a cruising speed of Mach 2. Mach 2. And would go to London to New York in 3.5 hours. In fact, I think it was so quick that with the time difference, you actually, depending which way you went, you would arrive before you left. Why don't they make planes like this anymore? I don't know. There's a whole probably, maybe we'll save that for when we look at the B2 and stuff like that. But super interesting video. Again, this is footage from 76, and there's clearly something that looks just like the photos that Ross Coulthart showed at the start of the video, and looks like many other things that surround airplanes. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. We'll get there. We're going to get there. Just be patient. Now, I haven't seen any guesses in the chat for what we're going to be looking at from 2011, unless I've missed it. But that's okay, because that means it's going to surprise some people, and I like that. I like keeping you guys on your toes and showing you something that you've maybe never seen before, or even just bringing up a really good case from a long time ago to kind of just, you know, get it back, get it refreshed in the memory. And for anyone who's maybe playing silently at home and guessed the Jerusalem UFO sighting hovering over the Dome of the Rock, shot by 4 different cameras that align perfectly in 2011. This is, in my opinion, one of the best UFO cases for just like a multitude of reasons, right? So, let me pull that up for you. Oh, by the way, this video has an amazing southern accent, and I'll do my best attempt at it after the video. But this is a UFO footage. Okay, actually, I'm going to do a quick poll because I'm interested. Have you seen this before? I just want to know if anyone's seen this before. This footage was shot on 4 separate cameras. I can't type and talk at the same time. I'm sorry. I'm a guy. Can't do it. Can't multitask. All right, the poll is up. Have you seen this footage before? This was shot on 4 different cameras, January 28th, 2011. And what's also interesting about it is that it's hovering directly over the Dome of the Rock, which is like a deeply religious and cultural landmark, specifically religion. I think more so like Islam and Judaism, but I think there's probably some Christian connections to it as well. It's super interesting. So let's check out this one first. Currently, only 50% of people that have voted have seen this, which is great. I'm going to be showing people something for the first time. And then we're going to look at a video of another 3 of them all synced up at the same time. So check this out. It'll start soon, I swear. It's coming. Holy volume.
I'd say that too. I think nighttime would be lovely, but is that UFO? Amazing. Holy shit. Oh, is that cool? You can almost
Look at how it's kind of moving like a, you see in like the plasma part of it, right? It's like a plasma. Let's keep watching. This is so loud for me in my ears, but it doesn't look that loud on the meters.
Hardly look at it. We've seen them in Mississippi like this, but never like
Here we go. So the thing just shoots up, and this is the worst footage, by the way. This is the worst footage, and the other three we're going to watch synced up in a minute are much better. Okay, so this thing was hovering over the Dome of the Rock and just sitting there, and then shoots up like, you know, bullet out of a gun, like we hear many, many times. But let's just go back and hear that Mississippi accent one more time.
Oh, is that cool? You can almost hardly look at it. We've seen them in Mississippi like this, but never like
Never like that. Love it. Love it. All right. So this is where it gets better. This is much better. So this is four different videos synced up at the same time of this sighting. Sorry, this is three. This is the other three. There are four in total. This is not the one we just watched. It's the other three. Did you all just do the accent? I hope so. By the time I get to America, you wouldn't even know I'm Australian. So it's descending, and then a third video kicks in. So it's sitting over the Dome of the Rock now, like what we saw in the last video. Deeply religious place. Watch. Bro. I mean, 2011. What were people rolling around with 2011? Probably like an iPhone 4. iPhone 4. Actually, I know it was an iPhone 4 because I had one in 2011. I'm pretty sure. So still decent technology, but for these four, and I remember this came out pretty much then. Like, this isn't old footage. This came out then. So, you know, to get these four different perspectives of the same thing all come out at the same time. And, you know, it's not like different perspectives on the same. It's like actual different perspectives. Like one person's over there, one person's over there. Yeah, we'll watch it again because it's incredible. It really is. Crazy, right? And obviously it's crazy because of the multiple footage and the characteristics that it's exhibiting, shooting off like that. Obviously, you know, we don't have anything that can do that. About half the people have never seen that before, which is awesome. You're welcome. But also, all the links will be in the description after the stream. I didn't have time to put them in before. But also, I think the fact that it's deeply a significant site, right? You know, just quickly, we looked at the old religious paintings earlier in the show, and you know, there's clearly an American interest in the Middle East. I mean, Israel was kind of created and put there. There are these significant landmarks, and then you know, if you want to really go back, that area is like Mesopotamia. We're talking about like the Sumerians. The tomb of Gilgamesh was allegedly found and potentially stolen by the Americans in 2003. You know, this is a very significant area for some reason. Well, we kind of know the reason, but I don't think we really know the reason. You know what I mean? So that's why I find that footage so interesting. So again, I'll try and chuck a link for that down there after the show. So there were whisperings of it in the chat. We've hinted at it. We're now here in the land of controversy. Let's talk about orbs hanging around planes, potentially teleporting planes. Okay, very controversial. I've had Ashton Forbes on the channel before. Ashton is of the belief that what we are seeing in those videos is US military technology. He may be right. I'm not sure about that. I love his theory. He's super well researched. Goes deep. He spoke to people like Salvatore Pais, who seems to know what he's looking at when he looks at those videos, which is extremely compelling for me. But anyway, as hard as it is to digest these videos, right? Given the history that we've already seen so far, orbs in the video we just watched, orbs have been exhibiting behavior that we can't explain for a long time. The last one in Jerusalem was 2011, so that's 3 years before MH370. But this isn't new, right? Again, the Foo Fighters, orbs and planes and in the sky is not new. Exhibiting properties and capabilities that we can't explain is not new. So I want to just say, I'm not trying to tell you what to think. I'm just trying to stimulate your mind. Is it much of a stretch to consider that they're also capable of something else that feels inexplicable? Like teleporting a plane, right? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, why are we assuming that these capabilities stop at flight? Oh, they can do amazing things in flight. I can't explain it. I have no idea how they're doing it, but they could. No, they can't teleport a plane though. No, they can't. They can't teleport a plane. Why? Oh, because they just can't. But you just saw it zoom off at the speed of a bullet. We can't do that. We don't know how they do that. Yeah, but they can't teleport a plane. Okay, bro. I'll leave you to that. Good luck with that. Again, I'm not saying it can, but given everything we've looked at today, I think if your mind is not at least open to the possibility, then I think your head is just so far deep in the sand, you're probably looking at the reptilians living inside the earth. So let's take a look at the clips. So these are the two clips synced up together. Again, just like we looked at with Jerusalem, there's no sound in these, by the way, so we can talk. These are synced up perfectly, frame by frame. And you guys know my stance on this video. I've talked about it a fair bit. Again, yes, please hit the like if you haven't already, if you're enjoying this. Spent all day putting this stuff together, so please, a like would mean a lot. Not only in 2014 would this have been tough from a visual effects perspective, each video individually I'm talking about, but to have them both match, this would have had to have been made, the only way to do that is to make it in a 3D environment and having two separate cameras and, drastically editing each one differently. Which, it's possible, but there are so many elements to this video that would just require such obscure decisions to be made while you're creating this, because you're not creating it with a reference. A lot of people try to debunk these videos and say, oh, look, if I just take this asset and I twist it here and I bump it there and I stretch it here and I recolor it there, now it kind of looks the same on this part of the frame. It's yeah, okay, it does. But when you're making something where you don't have a reference to copy, you're not making those weird decisions, because they're the kind of decisions you do when you're trying to make something match something else. When you don't have to do that, you don't make those weird, oh, grab this, twist it here, bump it there, blah, blah, blah. You just don't. Okay, you don't. Especially if you're just some dude in his bedroom making weird plane zap videos, okay? Again, I still reserve a small percentage that these videos are fake, 100%. But I just think those things are important to consider. And again, there's the zap. There's also this one here. So in 2013, so just rewinding a year here, there was other footage of orbs surrounding a plane in Spain. And I don't think this one gets zapped, but I just thought I'd throw it in here because, again, this stuff isn't new. And it's interesting that Ross was so against those videos on that News Nation clip. I like Ross and I like Ashton. I like both of those guys, and they don't seem to like each other, which is a shame. I think Ashton is very forward and very strong with his opinions, and I don't know, and I think he just is, and that's fair enough because he's obviously very firm in his beliefs. But I can say from maybe an Australian perspective, I know that he could come across a way that Australians wouldn't like. Like, I can totally see why Ross could be like, whoa, like, back the fuck up. Excuse me. Back up. Like, don't talk to me like that. Okay, don't come at me like that. I can see why Australians wouldn't like that. I don't know if that's just an Aussie thing, but yeah. It's not what you say, it's how you say it, I think, is maybe the issue there. But maybe one day, who knows, they'll kiss and make up, and Ross will tell us all about how 3 orbs zapped MH370. Who knows? I'm more, if they are real, I'm more inclined to believe that they are part of some kind of sphere network, some kind of, control system to do with the Earth, and maybe for some reason, something to do with that plane, it did that. Maybe it pulled it back to the construction facility. Maybe the scientists had things or knowledge on that plane that, I don't know. I'm theorizing here massively. But all I'm saying is I'm open to the idea that if they are real, I think maybe it's more likely that it's not the US controlling them, but I could be wrong. So let's jump forward another couple of years and let's go to 2018 with Jeremey Corbell releasing the Jellyfish video. Now, I made a little edit for this for us, and I just overlaid the pictures that we looked at earlier just as a comparison. Okay, these aren't the same things, or at least they weren't released the same. One is the classic Jellyfish UFO video, and the others are known as the Afghan Reaper pictures. But I think they look similar, which is why I've overlaid them in the footage. So let's take a look at that. Jeremy.
Synthermal. It was filmed on a weapons platform.
That's my fault.
You see that there's a dog there. See the animals are black. I'm assuming this is black hot. You see the object just went to white, and you'll see it going from white to black, white to black. And that's basically showing the heat differential. So it's going hot and cold, hot and cold.
Sorry, guys, to pause that. I'm sure we've probably seen this before anyway. I missed George Lambert, our latest weirdo who joined the members club. Thank you, George, for the support. Can we please see some Polarity love, Polarity hearts in the chat, and welcome George as our latest and newest weirdo. Thank you, brother.
Problem was the optics platform was jammed. These individuals who target with these platforms, they can shoot out an Al-Qaeda tire at 27 miles away, but not being able to lock it was one of the first signs that something's weird. I was able to find direct eyewitnesses and corroborate that this event did happen. When individuals would target in on it with the optics, the way it was described, each of these hanging things, they were stiff, like they weren't moving. They had geometric form, like scales, what was said to be scales, like an armor. There were also people with night vision who were out, and they were tasked to go look for it. Couldn't see it on the night vision. Only in the thermal spectrum could it be seen. But anything that looks like that appears to have a payload, that's a big deal. It could be dangerous. So these are high priority. But what happened is there were a couple other nations involved, and the feeds were shut. Just
apologies for the echo. Sorry, that's fixed now.
Shut immediately. So that put me on high alert too. Why is it completely being shut down? But that's not all it did.
The reason why the sound's kind of cutting in and out is because there's music behind it, and I use a program to remove that so the copyright gods don't smite me. But I think we've seen the most of that. We've probably seen that video before anyway. And I wanted to keep this show under 2 hours. We're at like an hour 45, and there's more than 2 hours left. So we're going to keep this thing moving. Also, we got another new member, Erlen Meyer. Thank you, my brother. Welcome to the Members Club, our latest honorary weirdo. Again, please, some Polarity love and hearts for Erlen in the chat. Welcome to the Members Club, brother. Now, let's skip forward to something we're all very, very familiar with, and that is the 2024 drone incursions, okay? Not just over New Jersey. They were all over the world. We are probably going to focus more on New Jersey, but we're going to look at something else first. So we could do like a whole 2 or 3 hours probably just on the footage and the news and the stories that came out around the New Jersey drone saga, right? But my man Red Panda Koala just did that. So we're going to be borrowing some of his video. And again, I'll link it below. You should go check out the full thing because he's a great He's great at documenting and collecting things together. He does a really good job. So it's a really thorough video essay, which we're going to be looking at quite a bit of. But his is like over an hour or about an hour. So there's plenty more to look at if you want to go and check that out. So before we get to that though, let's look at the Manchester Airport Orb. Okay, so we're going to flick back on the browser and this should take us there. Yep. Manchester Airport, UFO sighting from inside the cockpit. A spherical UAP of some kind, maybe a drone, seems to have also landed at Manchester Airport and took off when a security vehicle approached it. Strange things going on in the skies above the UK recently. This was posted November 28th, 2024. Now, I'll try maybe... I'll watch that one more time. That was them zooming in on it. This is the up close that we got, which again is blue. And, you know, until I went back and we read that 1887 newspaper clip, I'd never heard of a blue sphere before, really. But doing some digging, obviously there's this, there's that. And in the next clip, it looks like there's another one too. Now, when I was looking at all of this stuff, here's another photo. When I was looking at all of this stuff, I remembered that there was a 3D rendering done that went around on Twitter. And interestingly enough, Tom Thompson wrote, Reddit user Cargo Cultish, who I realized is in our Discord and is quite active. So one of the boys, one of the weirdos, shout out Cargo Cultish, nice work, brother. I didn't realize this was you. He did an in-depth analysis of the orb from the Manchester Airport incident, created a detailed 3D render and a breakdown video of the object. We're not going to look at the video, we're just going to look at the renders here. Yeah, let's just take a look at these. So this is based on the data that we could pull from that photo and from those that video. This is obviously the top left there is the actual thing, and Cargo Cultish has just tried to remake it in 3D, and based on what we can see, it's a pretty good representation, I think. And there you go. He's broken it down into all the different layers there. It's a little bit cut off, but you get the general idea. Manchester Airport was shut down, I think. Yeah, it wouldn't be the first one. I mean, I don't have it in here, but like, was it Langley Air Force Base was shut down, and like Wright Pat was even shut down for one night, like prior to the drones really kicking off, I believe. So this is potentially a realistic idea of what these things look like. Doesn't quite look like the Buga Sphere, at least on these three, like without those three layers, it actually kind of does with those horizontal lines tracing around it. But who knows what these things are? If we refer back to the 4chan whistleblower, they say that these things are made, they're purpose built, and they all sometimes have different jobs. Sometimes it's like surveillance, sometimes it's retrieving minerals and materials. You know, maybe whatever this thing is to do with what it was doing. And perhaps this is just kind of like the base layer. Liam Lewis says it's the Blue Star Kachina. Maybe. So the next one is not long after that, actually. Hopefully this is dated correctly. Yep, November 22nd, 2024. What was this one? This was 30th. So this video we're about to look at is actually 6 days earlier. And this is a blue orb that was caught on, I think, just kind of like one of those webcams that seem to be like active all the time in New York. I think it was actually on like a news report, and it just kind of happened to be, yeah, here we go. Check this out.
Claiming there was an incomplete environmental review prior to launching the plan.
There it is. That is blue. You can see that that's obviously blue. Unless it's like a reflection. Nah. I was going to say maybe it's like a reflection of the water, but I don't think so. You can see straight like through that to the buildings, and it's not water. It's blue. Very interesting. Very interesting. Let's keep moving though, because we got lots and lots to get into. We're going to jump to Red Panda's video now. So we're going to look at around 10 to 15 minutes of this video, just sort of like different sections of it. And we're just going to start with some general drone footage of of the New Jersey drone saga.
After we made contact.
Okay, that was extremely loud. Just give me a moment. And this isn't where we want to start either. We want to start at around here.
Kids,
lots of light. Yeah. That's my gut.
Yeah, no doubt. To be continued.
Soon, more and more reports of mystery drones were reported in the New Jersey area, and videos began flooding social media of strange objects in the skies.
What the fuck is that? You seeing that, right?
That's a reaction.
They're fucking drones.
And so she had to have a partial foot in Gill.
You saw them, right?
Yes. Yeah. Huge.
Oh my gosh, I don't like that. Stop. Oh my gosh. Oh my god.
What's on the back of it?
Oh my gosh.
What is on the back of that thing?
Which is low. Holy fuck, dude. Why?
I love this one. Dad!
Come out quick!
Come on, Dad!
Dude!
What the heck are we seeing?
That's like... It's an actual... What? It's like landing.
Honey. What is that? You get that.
I am. It's like landing.
Nobody else sees this? Are we crazy?
I have it on video.
Are we crazy?
A lot of people in the chat saying they're owls. Some people saying they're not. So those... I think the general consensus is that a lot of the things that were up in the sky in New Jersey were owls, and they were deliberately put there to confuse the situation because there was a large amount of anomalous things in the sky that were showing up. And there are reports of these things like shape-shifting, replicating themselves, turning into what looks like aircraft. I think we will see some footage of that as well.
It's like down in the trees now.
What the hell? We should have stayed over there. Wait, we're gonna die here. I'm so...
Instagram, what's that? Look, hold on, let me stop walking. What's that? That's a plane? Why it ain't moving? Then what's this little homie back here? That's a plane? Why it ain't moving? Look at that, it got 4 lights on it.
God.
And like, it's easy for people to be like, oh, it's clearly a plane. And don't get me wrong, some of them do look like a plane. And if there was just like 1 or 2 videos of people filming it going like, what is that? And it obviously looks like a plane, then you could be like, yeah, okay, I think maybe they're just deluded or freaking out. But when there are like so many people filming planes, what look like planes, and freaking out saying that's not a plane, I think like you should trust them. I think like when there's enough of them, it's like, okay, do you really think that like the way I look at it is like, okay, do I really think that I'm so superior that everyone else around me must be going crazy and my version of reality must be correct? Everyone else is wrong. Like that Principal Skinner. No. Am I out of touch? No, the children are wrong. That's that kind of energy for me. Like when I see enough of this stuff, even when it looks to me like that kind of looks like a plane, but if I've seen like 20 different videos of people all doing it, then I'm kind of start to feel like, okay, there must be something to this.
This is terrifying. That's a UFO.
Is that
It's
really
moving. It's moving.
What is that? What is that? What is that?
It's a UFO.
So, are you videoing?
Yeah. What? That's like a UFO.
Yo, look at that one. Yo, they're all in the sky. There's like 1, 2, 3.
I'm in Texas. It wasn't just Jersey. Yeah, it was all over. It was all over.
Morristown police sent an alert to residents Sunday saying, "Get up
Shut
and
up.
look at my
family members." Like,
all right, actually, we'll skip forward. Sorry, I told the news reporter to shut up. That's probably a bit unnecessary. Let's go here. So this is touching more on what I was just saying before, which was that there were so many reports of them shape-shifting by like mayors and stuff too. Like people of an official capacity were on the record saying, I've seen these things change shape in front of my eyes. So, you know, there's that. And also mimicking is a whole other thing as well. So let's take a look at this for a few minutes.
It's how could you not be freaked out? There's freaking.
Wait, this is not the. I skipped the wrong thing. Sorry. Here we go. Yeah. This is where it gets weird.
Something that goes hand in hand with the mimicry reports are the reports of mystery drones shape-shifting. What was often reported was an orb-type craft changing their shape into a conventional-looking aircraft, complete with FAA lights. The common prosaic explanation is it's a conventional plane flying towards the person filming, then turning, exposing the red and white lights. This is an example of conventional planes that were shared with me as examples of what these planes are doing. I'm going to include these videos of alleged shapeshifting because I personally know people in New Jersey who claim to have witnessed the shapeshifting with their own eyes.
Scott in Geneta was fishing Saturday at Island Beach State Park when he saw what he describes as lights brighter than stars forming over the horizon.
When they came toward the shore, it changed from a bright white light to a winged craft with flashing lights.
Doesn't seem to be bothered. No longer in the one sight. Here it is going back now. This is so freaking weird. This was staying still for over an hour. Come on, buddy, come this way. Keep coming.
White Rabbit says Lockheed Martin have been developing technologies for aircraft skin that can change shape, color, and even potentially fly autonomously. This smart skin technology allows the aircraft to adapt. There's actually a video on that. If you guys YouTube like Lockheed Martin, maybe Skunkworks, they have a video like flexing, like talking about it, saying like, you know, imagine what we can do when instead of having wires and cables, it's all in the skin of the craft. And this is not a new video either. Like it's happening. It's already happened.
Look at the different lights now. It's moving really fast now.
Yo, we caught one, dog.
Yo. All right, I think we'll actually. I was intending to watch that a little bit longer, but for the sake of time, we'll wrap it up there. It's a massive video. Great job by Red Panda. I'll link it below if you want to check the full thing out, or just go to his channel. And we'll keep moving. Okay, so we got 2 extra little videos that I want to show you, just on this sort of saga, and then we're going to get to the Buga Sphere. So I thought this one was cool because this is in Arizona, and we've been talking about that a lot.
What is this? The kids just pointed it out. We're in Surprise, Arizona. And this thing has been flying around like this.
What the look? Where is that?
Look, it's dropping stuff. It's shedding the material like we were looking at earlier.
It's gone.
Wait, no,
oh, it just shot real fast.
Dude, what was that?
I have no... What is this?
And we got one more.
The kids just pointed it out. We're in Surprise, Arizona.
Watch it drop again. Look.
And this thing has been flying around like that.
Wild. Wild. That's not. That doesn't look like anything that we can explain, right? And then these are allegedly some of the molten metal that was retrieved by someone in New Jersey. This was posted December 24th of December 2024. So, you know, dates line up. Obviously, there's no real hard evidence. They're just pictures. But it's interesting. It is interesting. And, you know, I would assume that maybe this is similar to what Harold Malmgren touched. I don't know. Maybe I could be way off there, but he allegedly handled something, right? So let's get to the current day. The Buga Sphere. The talk of the town. Whoops. What we'll do is we'll play the footage, the original footage, and then we'll talk a bit more.
Llega hasta donde María y se trata de caer al suelo como quien dice ya voy a caer porque no puedo levitar más. Ella se levanta altísimo y se va para donde.
So this is obviously, if there's any Spanish speakers in the chat, sorry, but I'm just muting it for now. Most of us probably can't understand it. This is the OG footage, I believe. I think there's 2 videos. This is the first one. You know, hovering, flying slowly, does kind of line up with the things the 4chan whistleblower has said. I'm not necessarily saying everything is the 4chan whistleblower, but I do find it interesting when the things that they've mentioned line up after the fact, right? So this thing was recovered. So if you watched the last live stream we did, I think it was Weird Week the other day, we actually looked at the conference that was held, I think, in Mexico, where Stephen Greer, Danny Sheehan, and Eric Burleson were there talking about it. And they even got the guy who recovered the sphere in this video to speak. And it's so funny because I think he intentionally wore the same clothes. He's up on stage in this yellow shirt and the hat and jeans. And I just don't think that's a coincidence. It's like he was like, I don't know if someone told him or if he was just like, I need to prove that I am that guy. So wash the yellow shirt, get the hat out because I'm going on stage. I thought that was funny. So we've also got, I basically just searched what was the latest for us to take a look at. So I think this is some photos from that conference that we looked at the other day. There's Eric Burleson, Danny Sheehan, and I think if we actually, yeah, there they are. So Jeremey Mawson, I think that's how you say that, is kind of the guy that was hosting the event and kind of, I don't know, I guess you could say really pushing the whole narrative. Narrative sounds like a negative context, but you know what I mean. And that was them at the speech. This is all in Spanish and dubbed, which was kind of ruined the viewing experience a little bit. But here's a good look at the sphere up front. Many people have issues with the fact that the inscribing, the engravings on it just look very handmade, and you can't deny that. I mean, even if we just look at this part here, you can see that this little circle is far closer to this edge of the triangle than this edge. Now, that's just a basic small detail, but like, you know, if this is sort of like being intelligently created by some crazy technology, I would expect that circle to be in the middle. You know, like it's simple, and it could be fickle of me to say that, and naive of me to say that, by the way. But, you know, I think any of us can't help but point out these little imperfections that just feel strange. But it could point to the fact that, like the 1887 newspaper article said, that it's man-made, that some kind of intelligence created this, but made with hands. D says it's an alien QR code. Maybe. I wonder if anyone's tried to pull it up on their iPhone camera. So this could be man-made, and I just want to highlight that because I want to tie that into my theory at the end. But let's keep moving, because what's interesting about this is after the conference that we all looked at, Stephen Greer came out with a video that someone had tried to steal the Buga Sphere, and there's actually been an update on that, and I've got the full video here. So let's take a look.
Hello everyone, this is Dr. Stephen Greer. I'm in Mexico City. As many of you know, we've been examining the Buga Sphere for the last 2 days with Congressman Burleson and a group of scientists. We've just been notified by Jaime Mason that there was an attempt by fake policemen to enter the vault where this Buga Sphere is stored, and we have notified security and the apparatus I'm working with under law enforcement. And you should know that the other risk here is that we have taken specific samples from the Buga Sphere that will be tested in a state-of-the-art lab to prove whether or not the metal, as well as some of the other components, are of Earth or outer space origin. Those scientists' information have been provided to the top law enforcement and security apparatus that I'm working with, and so any sort of attempts to interfere with this examination will be known, and the people and perpetrators will be held to account for. So this is what I wanted people to know, and we're doing everything to set up security for this. Thank you.
My man Lou just came in dressed like a cop and swiped it. You know it was him. That was made by Chupacabra, little AI, fantastic AI edit there, which I just thought was so funny that I wanted to include. So no, there's actually no real update on who's tried to steal the Buga Sphere. If anyone is trying to like ask Grok if that was real, no, it's not. It's not real. It's just AI. Relax. Lou didn't actually try to steal the Buga Sphere, but it's funny, okay? And when we're talking about the fact that there may be alien orbs controlling our planet, it's good to have a little laugh sometimes, isn't it? All right, so we're wrapping up now, and what I'm actually going to look at quickly is my own encounter. Okay, I did a video on this on the channel. That's the thumbnail for it, and I just want to quickly look at the footage because obviously I don't look at it and I never look at it. The last time I looked at it was when I made the video, which was months ago. It's not the most groundbreaking footage, but because it's mine, I know what I saw, and I just thought it'd be cool to look at quickly. Actually, before we do, and another orb story that's interesting, right, is about 3 or 4 months ago, I went to get a haircut at a new barber, and he asked me what I do for work, and this was like in the earlier days when I was just started doing YouTube full time, so I was kind of like, I do YouTube because I know the follow-up question is like, what's your channel about? And then I've got to be like UFOs and aliens and shit. And, said that. And, he was kind of like, oh, random, weird, but whatever. And then he's like, oh, I actually saw something like not that long ago. And I was like, oh, really? Like, tell me. And then he goes, yeah, I got a video of it. And I was like, okay. Pulls out the video, and it's not far from my house. Just a silver sphere in the sky. Not super close, but it was daytime, and you could see that it was silver, and it was just stationary. And this is a guy who is like not interested in UFOs or aliens at all, but just saw something and was strange enough for him to pull over and film it. Someone who isn't interested in this stuff. So I found that interesting because it was literally a silver orb. He showed me the video. But anyway, let's take a look at my footage. We don't need sound for this. It's just wind. But yeah. Again, if you want the full context on this, go and watch the video. Because I tried to break it down. I actually went back to the site where I saw this and tried to run you guys through it. Because I'm kind of zoomed in here, you kind of can't tell the perspective of how much it's moving. So this video goes for about a minute, right? And if you sort of took note, I'll skip back just quickly. If you sort of take note how this thing is above this, top end of the tree here. And if we skip back to where we just were, I mean, you can already see how much it's traveled. I was stationary. I didn't move. So you can see how this thing's moving. And when I zoom in on it again, you can see that this thing is a solid light. It's not flashing like a plane, doesn't change. And I did do what I guess you could say as a CE5 protocol prior to this, not in like a very serious manner, honestly. Kind of just like I was throwing the ball for my dog, and just kind of like in between throws was taking like a minute or two to close my eyes and just like put out some invitational energy. And I saw that. And as a UFO person, I look up at the sky literally every time I'm outside, every time. Never see anything. And then the one time I did this thing, I saw this. And yeah, obviously you can see it's not even dark yet. And it's the only thing in the sky that you can see. And so there's no stars. Then I stopped recording at that point because I was like, man, I want to actually enjoy this and just look at it for a sec. And then I stopped recording for about 20 or 30 seconds. And then I was like, oh shit, I need to record this in case something happens. So I started recording again. And you can see, now you can see the horizon. It's getting further away. And it just kind of vanishes, dematerializes. Maybe it just went through a cloud. I don't know. I'm not going to say anything sensational. But you can see there, right? If I just go back to that quickly. Sorry, we won't stay on this for too long. For some reason, the camera like shot back maybe to a different lens at the very last second of the video. So you can see that horizon that we were just zoomed in on You can see how far away that is, right? And if you look to the top left here, you can see those branches and the very top left of the frame. Those branches that you see there are... It's coming back. Are these, right? So you can see it went from there in that video to there. There's the horizon, how close it is to the horizon. And then it obviously vanishes. And in the last frame, you can see those branches. So you can see how far it's gone. And again, this all happened over about a minute and a half. So it was moving quite quickly. Anyway, the full story's in that video. Go and check it out. I didn't want to hang on that too long, but I just thought it'd be cool to throw in, seeing as we're looking at all the history of Orbs. This is Orbs, a history. And if you know what movie I'm referencing there, I tip my hat to you because we likely have the same type of autism. $20 coming in from UFO Hunters. He says, great channel, Josh. Thank you, UFO Hunters. I appreciate the support a lot. That's a massive super chat. Thank you. So this brings us to the conclusion. I wanted to keep this under 2 hours. We're a little bit over, but you know, it's okay. It's okay. So I've got a few little notes here because I wanted to give you my final thoughts on what I think is going on here. Is there a sphere network? It might kind of look like that I'm reading from notes a little bit because I kind of am. Okay. So do I think that these orbs are part of some kind of control and surveillance system? My answer is yes, but possibly not exactly how we would understand it. And I actually have two different theories here. And I think I'm going to keep the second one for not necessarily a direct part 2, but it warrants its own video. So for part 1, actually, sorry, we'll come back here. And I'm going to put these up here to go along with my theory. Okay. So my first theory is, given the history that we've all just looked at and the fact that these two monuments sit outside the Vatican and the United Nations headquarters. Okay, this is obviously in Vatican City. This is in New York. This one was built in 1990. This one was built in 1996. And I think it's clear that the controlling forces of the world, how deep they are and how compartmentalized that is, I'm not sure. But at some level, they know what these things are. Or at least they not only know what they are, but they seem to like respect it or attempt to align themselves with it, or maybe even worship it. I'm not sure, because it explains the deep obsession with ancient Egyptian mystery schools and like Egyptian symbolism that is riddled through the United States, which really makes no sense on the surface, right? You kind of have to dig into, you know, like occult stuff and like mystery schools and secret societies to start to understand why there would be all of this Egyptian symbolism throughout the United States. Now, I've covered that stuff in depth more in other videos, and I wanted to have some slides ready and I forgot. I'm sorry. But just to go off the top of my head, you know, you've got pyramids on the dollar bill and like mid-century Latin. You've got the area of the Grand Canyon that is completely prohibited to not only go to, but to fly over. You're not even allowed to fly over it. And inside that section, there are, we can check on Google Maps. We've looked at it before. There are mountains and peaks called the Temple of Ra, the Tower of Set, Isis, Horus. All of these Egyptian gods are named after these areas of the Grand Canyon that's totally prohibited to go to even fly over. You can check it on Google Maps, and it's inside that area where the G.E. Kincaid exploration was said to have happened, which is in like 1912, where he was said to have found like a cave inside these mountains that was full of hieroglyphics, areas that felt like they were built for like a ceremony, and just like sacred sort of places, essentially. This is all inside the Grand Canyon. And then obviously there's not to mention, you know, you've got the obelisk out the front of, I think it's the Capitol building. You've got a giant obelisk. So does the Vatican. Okay, this is literally an Egyptian symbol of like procreation. Like it essentially is a giant shaft. Like, and I mean that. Like that is actually what it symbolizes, and it traces back to Egyptian symbolism, right? And then you've got all of this weird stuff plastered all over the rockets and the mission launch patches and the rockets themselves. Okay, You've got, I wish I had the slides, but I'm sure if you guys have watched my videos, you've seen them before. You've got like the Anubis. You've got these females like casting magic, which some say are like the Scarlet Woman, who Jack Parsons, the father of American rocketry, was allegedly summoning with the Babylon working ritual with L. Ron Hubbard in the desert in like the 40s, around when all of this shit really started. And these people seem to actually take this stuff very seriously. Very, very seriously. Not to mention that Thoth, the god of wisdom, the ibis with the long beak, is literally like carved into the doors of the library at the Capitol building in the United States. Yes, Tom, MPS, JPL, Jack Parsons, totally occult, totally embedded with like Aleister Crowley, Egyptian Hermeticism. It all traces back to these secret societies. And that's kind of in my part 2, my other theory that I'll go into in another video. So it's quite clear, first of all, that they take that stuff seriously. Okay, so given that, what I would say is that rather than like an alien sphere network, alien being like some other planet is here, some from another planet are here, I think it's potentially an advanced AI-based system left over from an ancient civilization. Perhaps like a civilization that was, able to move and cut enormous pieces of granite stone. A civilization that was able to do things, and still to this day, like, we don't know how to do them, and they're allegedly thousands of years old. And a civilization that essentially had technology that we don't have. They must have, right? And that maybe these orbs operate on an AI system that is designed to detect when a civilization starts to emerge and flourish again after a cataclysmic event has happened, after a reset. Like, there is this system built into the earth that once civilization props up again, it triggers this system. Again, this is me just theorizing, guys. It triggers this system that it switches on, and then it begins to interface with the civilization, like mentally, telepathically. And because it's exhibiting things that the civilization doesn't understand, it's then able to sort of impart belief systems and ensure that these old ways and these old teachings remain protected while the civilization kind of remains controlled, because they're controlled by interfacing with them technologically as well. Because there are reports that these objects often seem like gifts. Like Diana Pasolka writes about this. Tim Taylor refers to some of them as gifts, like they are just left there like a Rubik's Cube for humanity to like stimulate our minds and push us further down a technological road, which if you listen to the Hopi and the native cultures, that's a bad road, or at least going too far down that road without balance is not right. You need to have like your spiritual balance with technology. That's essentially what Adam has just said. Atlantis, they were in balance, and that's why they were so superior. When you go too far technologically and not enough spirit, you get the cataclysm, right? So we're nearly done here. The technological road that these technology is interfacing with us and leading us down seems like that it's always designed to end in us building more AI to propagate the system. Because we are building an intelligence artificially. We call it artificial, but we don't call like our paintings that we make. We don't like make a people who make tables and chairs. We don't call it an artificial table or chair. It's just a table or a chair that we made. We have made an intelligence. And it's almost like and when I say we, I mean Earth and our society are like a flower that this advanced technology system pollinates itself on, and we kind of like systematically, unknowingly reproduce it. So it's like got this like system default save in for when civilization props up, this thing interfaces with us and steers us down to continue its own survival by humanity recreating AI again. So this idea kind of leans into something that Dana Pasulka has spoke about. And I believe the next book that she's writing is entirely about this stuff. And there is a quote that she said comes from Tim Taylor, where Tim Taylor apparently said, "We become them through technology." And that is the point of it. And that's why I think that they interface here. We build the AI and merge with it. And now whatever they are able to kind of like have this sort of like 3D experience with us again. That's my theory. That's theory number one, guys. Let me know what you think. I know it's pretty out there, but I'm drawing on things that we've heard from people like Dana Pasulka, kind of like my own theories of things I've pulled together as well. But I think, you know, it might not all be true, but I definitely think there's probably some nuggets in there that are maybe at least knocking on the right doors. I'm looking forward to giving you guys my other theory though, but like I said, we're over time, and the other theory probably could be its own video, and I'm looking forward to doing that. So we'll talk about that one soon in a live stream. But thank you all for being here, guys. I've had a great time. I hope you have too. Please like the video, join our Discord. I'm going to go stream Stargate in there right now. So if you want to watch Stargate, get in there. But thank you for being here, guys. Be good to each other. Be kind. Get outside. Touch grass. And I will see you all next time.
Eventually, people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light. In our galaxy, everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.